What happens when a master of comedy walks into a room where laughter has rules and decides to break them anyway? Before you hear the punchline, before the silence drops like a guillotine, before a single word turns into a war, take a second to subscribe to the Truth Narrator, like this video, and comment right now with what you think is about to happen. Because once this story starts, there's no pause button. The studio lights hum like a living thing as the audience settles into their seats, that low, excited murmur vibrating through the floor. There's comfort in this place, a familiar rhythm. The View has always been a stage where opinions clash politely, where sharp words wear velvet gloves. The hosts smile as the cameras warm, papers stacked neatly, coffee cups placed just so. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the center, relaxed but alert, the quiet gravity of someone who has seen it all and refuses to be surprised again. Her posture says control. Her eyes say memory. Backstage, Chris Rock adjusts his jacket, glancing at his reflection in the mirror. The smile he practices is the one people expect, easy, mischievous, harmless. But behind it, there's an edge tonight. He's done rooms tougher than this. He's survived silence that could freeze bone. He tells himself this is just another chair, another conversation. Still, something in the air feels different, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks open a summer sky. The producer gives the signal. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Chris exhales. 2, 1. Applause erupts as he steps onto the set, a roar that lifts him, carries him forward. He waves, nods, feeds off it the way he always has. The hosts greet him, laughter flowing easily, a few jokes exchanged, safe ones. Whoopi leans forward, welcoming, her voice warm. "It's good to see you, Chris." "Always good to be seen," he replies, and the audience laughs. The rhythm is working. The dance is familiar. They talk about comedy first. The craft. The line between humor and hurt. Chris speaks with that rolling cadence, hands slicing the air as he explains how jokes are meant to provoke, to poke at truth until it squeals. Whoopi listens, nodding, interjecting now and then, her tone measured. She's been on both sides of that line, comedian and commentator, joker and judge. Then it happens. It's small at first. Almost nothing. A joke that drifts just a little too close to the edge, wrapped in charm, tossed off like it's no big deal. Chris smiles as he says it, eyebrows raised, waiting for the laugh. The audience responds, a scattered ripple, unsure but polite. Whoopi doesn't laugh. The silence isn't loud, but it's heavy. Cameras catch it, magnify it. Chris notices immediately. He's tuned to rooms the way sailors are tuned to wind. He shifts in his chair, adds a follow-up line, softer, meant to smooth things over. "Hey, I'm just saying." Whoopi holds up a hand. "Let me stop you right there," she says, her voice calm but firm, the way a teacher speaks when the lesson is about to change. The audience hushes. Even the lights seem to dim, as if leaning in. Chris blinks, surprised. He's been interrupted before, sure. But this feels different. "Okay," he says lightly. "Go ahead." Whoopi continues, eyes locked on him now. There's a difference between challenging people and dismissing them. And sometimes jokes do the latter, whether you mean them to or not. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Chris leans back, crossing his arms, still smiling but tighter now. But that's comedy, right? I mean, if we start putting fences around jokes. I've done comedy longer than most people in this room. Whoopi cuts in, and there it is. Not anger. Authority. So don't explain it to me like I'm new. The audience reacts audibly now. A few gasps. A nervous laugh. The co-hosts exchange glances, sensing the shift, the invisible line that's just been crossed. Chris's smile fades. For the first time, the mask slips. "I'm not explaining," he says, his voice sharpening. "I'm talking. And I'm responding," Whoopi replies, unflinching. Because words land whether you intend them to or not. The tension thickens, stretching the moment until it feels unreal, like watching glass bend before it shatters. Chris leans forward, elbows on his knees. "So what, comedians are supposed to check with everyone before they speak now?" Whoopi leans forward too, mirroring him, the center of the table suddenly feeling like a battlefield. "No," she says quietly. "But they should be ready to stand by what they say when someone tells them it hurt." That word, hurt, hangs in the air. Chris laughs, short and incredulous. "Hurt? Come on. It was a joke." "And that," Whoopi says, her voice dropping, "is exactly why this matters." The audience is dead silent now. No coughs. No whispers. Just the soft whir of cameras and the sound of two worlds colliding. Chris straightens, anger flashing across his face. You know what? I think people are too sensitive. Whoopi's eyes narrow, not in rage, but in disappointment. And I think that's an easy thing to say when you're not the one being laughed at. The co-hosts try to step in, gentle attempts to redirect, but the moment has its own gravity. Chris shakes his head. So now I'm the bad guy for doing my job? No, Whoopi says. You're the bad guy if you refuse to listen. Applause breaks out, scattered but real. Chris looks around, hearing it, feeling it land. His jaw tightens. Wow, he mutters. Didn't know I walked into a courtroom. Whoopi doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. You walked into a conversation, she says. And conversations go both ways. The camera zooms in on Chris's face, catching the flicker of something raw, pride bruised, ego pricked. He opens his mouth to respond, to fire back with something sharper, something that will win the room. The audience leans forward, sensing the explosion that's coming. And in that suspended second, with millions watching and the air buzzing with anticipation, everyone realizes the same thing at once. This is no longer about a joke. It's about to become a war. Chris Rock doesn't answer right away. That pause, just a breath too long, does more damage than any punchline ever could. The audience feels it, the co-hosts feel it, and Whoopi feels it most of all. This isn't banter anymore. This is pride staring down principle, and neither wants to blink. Chris finally exhales, a sharp laugh slipping out as if he's trying to shake off the weight in the room. You know, he says, spreading his hands, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You make one joke, and suddenly it's a whole moral debate. Whoopi tilts her head slightly, studying him, not as a fellow performer now, but as a man standing at a crossroads. No, she replies evenly. You made a choice, and now you're being asked to own it. The word own hits him hard. His shoulders stiffen. I own my jokes, he says, voice rising just a notch. That's what I do. I say what other people are thinking but are too scared to say out loud. A few people in the audience clap, relieved to have a side to stand on. The sound cracks the silence, but it also sharpens it. Whoopi nods once slowly. And a lot of people, she says, are tired of being the punchline for someone else's courage. The applause that follows is louder, more unified. Chris turns his head toward the crowd, eyebrows raised. See, this is the problem. You're cheering being offended. Whoopi doesn't look at the audience. She keeps her eyes on him. No, she says softly. They're cheering being heard. One of the co-hosts tries to slide in, her voice careful. Maybe what we're really talking about is. But Chris cuts her off, the frustration now spilling over. Nah, let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. Because comedy used to be the one place where you could say the uncomfortable truth without getting lectured. Whoopi's jaw tightens, just for a second. And truth, she fires back, used to come with responsibility. The audience reacts with a collective ooh, the sound sharp and involuntary. Chris leans back, shaking his head. Responsibility to who? Everybody. Because that's impossible. To the people you're talking about, Whoopi says. To the people listening. To the moment you're standing in. Chris scoffs. So what? I'm supposed to apologize for making people laugh. I didn't say apologize, Whoopi responds. I said listen. The cameras catch a bead of sweat forming at Chris's temple. He wipes it away with the back of his hand, forcing a grin. I am listening. I just don't agree. And that's fair, Whoopi replies. But dismissing people's feelings as too sensitive, that's not disagreement. That's disrespect. Now the applause is immediate, instinctive. Chris's grin fades completely. He leans forward again, voice lower, more dangerous. You know what I hear? I hear someone telling me how to do my job. Whoopi leans forward too, their faces closer now, the table between them feeling suddenly fragile. No, she says, eyes steady. I'm telling you how your job affects people. For a moment, neither speaks. The room holds its breath. Even the producers backstage are frozen, hands hovering over switches, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment burn. Chris breaks the silence with a laugh that sounds more like a bark. Man, I came here to talk about my tour. And now, Whoopi says, you're talking about something much bigger. He looks at her, really looks at her now, and there's a flash of something like disbelief. So this is what it is. You're turning this into a lesson. If that's how you hear it, Whoopi answers, maybe ask yourself why. That lands. Hard. Chris opens his mouth, then closes it again. The audience senses the shift, the crack in the armor. But pride rushes in to seal it. You know, he says finally, straightening up, I've been doing this a long time. I've been booed, threatened, canceled before canceling was even a word. I'm still here. Whoopi nods. So am I. Her words are simple, but they carry decades. The room feels it. Chris chuckles, shaking his head. Yeah, but you're sitting on that side of the table now. And you're sitting on this one, she replies. That doesn't mean we forgot where we came from. One of the co-hosts tries again, gently. Maybe we can agree that comedy and conversation both matter. Chris waves her off, not unkindly but firmly. No, because this matters. Because if comedians start pulling punches, we lose something. And if we never question them, Whoopi shoots back, we lose something too. The audience is split now, applause and murmurs colliding like opposing waves. Chris turns back to Whoopi, eyes narrowed. So what do you want from me right now in this moment? Whoopi doesn't hesitate. I want you to acknowledge that what you say has weight. He laughs again, but there's no humor in it. Everything has weight now. Every word. Every joke. That's exhausting. So is being on the receiving end, Whoopi says quietly. That quiet is louder than shouting. Chris looks down at his hands, flexing his fingers, then looks back up. You know what? I think people choose to be offended. A sharp intake of breath ripples through the audience. Whoopi's expression changes. Not anger, not sadness, but something colder. And I think, she replies, that's a luxury not everyone has. The words land like a slap. The co-hosts fall completely silent. Chris stares at Whoopi, stunned, as if he didn't expect her to go there. The tension in the room is now almost unbearable, thick enough to choke on. For a split second, it looks like Chris might back down, might soften, might find a bridge across the divide. Instead, he leans back, crossing his arms again, drawing a line in the air between them. Well, he says, voice tight, I guess we're just not going to agree. Whoopi nods once. No, she says. But disagreement doesn't have to mean dismissal. The audience erupts, applause and shouts filling the studio. Chris forces a smile for the cameras, but his eyes are dark now, calculating. The war hasn't peaked yet. It's still climbing, and everyone watching can feel it. This conversation isn't winding down. It's winding up. The applause dies down slowly, like a fire starved of oxygen, leaving behind a thick, uneasy quiet. Chris Rock shifts in his seat, uncrossing his arms, then crossing them again, as if his body can't decide whether to retreat or attack. The cameras stay tight on him now, catching every flicker of irritation, every forced breath. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg sits perfectly still, hands folded, eyes steady. She looks less like someone in a talk show debate, and more like someone waiting for the truth to finally be said out loud. Chris breaks the silence first. You know what, he says, voice measured but strained. This is why people don't want to talk anymore. Because the second you say something real, someone tells you you're wrong for feeling it. Whoopi doesn't blink. No, she replies calmly. They tell you how it felt to hear it. He shakes his head. That's not my responsibility. The audience reacts immediately, some groans, some applause, the room splitting again down an invisible line. Whoopi leans back slightly, taking him in, then leans forward again, her tone sharpening just enough to cut. When you have a platform like yours, she says, everything you say is your responsibility. Chris laughs, but it's hollow. So what? I'm supposed to carry the weight of the world because I tell jokes. You're supposed to carry the weight of your words, Whoopi fires back. That's different. The co-hosts sit frozen, eyes darting between them like spectators at a tennis match that's turned violent. One of them opens her mouth, then closes it again, sensing there's no safe place to land. Chris rubs his face, dragging his hands down slowly, as if trying to wipe the tension away. You know what this feels like? He says, looking back up. It feels like I'm being told my voice is dangerous. Whoopi nods once. Sometimes, she says, it is. That lands hard. A collective gasp ripples through the audience, followed by scattered applause. Chris stiffens, eyes widening just a fraction. Dangerous, he repeats. Wow. He leans forward, pointing gently, not aggressively, but deliberately. You're sitting here calling a black comedian dangerous for making jokes. Do you hear how that sounds? Whoopi's expression shifts, something old and deep flickering behind her eyes. Don't do that, she says quietly. Don't twist this into something it's not. I'm not twisting anything, Chris shoots back. I'm pointing out the irony. The irony, Whoopi replies, her voice rising for the first time, is that you're talking about freedom while refusing to hear how that freedom lands on other people. The audience erupts, louder now, emotion spilling over restraint. Chris waits for it to die down, jaw clenched, then speaks over the last of it. I've spent my whole career talking about uncomfortable truths. about race, about power, about hypocrisy. And now suddenly I'm the problem? You're not the problem, Whoopi says. The refusal to reflect is. Chris slaps his hand lightly on the table. I reflect plenty. I just don't apologize for being honest. No one asked you to apologize for honesty, Whoopi snaps. We're asking you to question cruelty. That word hangs there, cruelty, sharp and undeniable. Chris laughs again, louder this time, shaking his head. Cruelty? That's a stretch. Is it? Whoopi asks. Or does it just feel that way because you've never been on the receiving end of that particular joke? The room goes still. Chris opens his mouth, then closes it, searching for footing. His eyes flick briefly to the audience, then back to Whoopi. You don't know what I've been on the receiving end of. No, Whoopi says softly. But I know what a lot of people watching have. The camera cuts to the audience. Faces tense, some nodding, some frowning, some clearly uncomfortable. Back on Chris, his confidence wavers for a heartbeat. Then it hardens. So what's the solution? He demands. Censor myself? Ask permission? Because that's not comedy. The solution, Whoopi replies, voice steady but intense, is empathy. Chris scoffs. Empathy doesn't get laughs. Maybe it gets something better, Whoopi says. Understanding. He leans back, throwing his hands up. See, that's the difference between us. You're talking about understanding. I'm talking about truth. And I'm telling you, Whoopi counters, truth without empathy is just noise. The audience explodes again, applause crashing like thunder. Chris waits, lips pressed together, breathing heavy. When the noise finally fades, he speaks more quietly now, the anger giving way to something more personal. You know what really bothers me, he says. That no matter what I say, it's never enough. There's always another line I crossed, another group I offended. Whoopi's voice softens, but her words don't. Welcome to the world a lot of people live in every day. That hits him like a body blow. He stares at her, eyes searching, as if looking for sarcasm, for exaggeration. He finds none. So you're saying I should just accept being criticized constantly? He asks. I'm saying, Whoopi replies, that criticism isn't oppression. The audience reacts instantly, louder than before. Chris's head snaps back slightly as if struck. Damn, he mutters, almost to himself. For a moment, it feels like the fight might finally burn itself out. Chris looks tired now, the fire dimmed but not gone. He sighs long and slow. You know, he says, I didn't expect this today. Neither did I, Whoopi says. But here we are. He chuckles weakly. Yeah, here we are. The co-host sees the opening, one of them jumping in quickly. Maybe this just shows how powerful conversations like this can be. Chris interrupts, but not harshly. No, let her finish. All eyes swing back to Whoopi. She sits up straighter, aware of the weight of the moment, of the millions watching. All I'm saying, she says, is that comedy doesn't exist in a vacuum. Neither does pain. When those two collide, pretending it doesn't matter helps no one. Chris nods slowly, reluctantly. I hear you, he says. I just don't know if I agree. That's okay, Whoopi replies. But hearing is the first step. The audience applauds, sustained and emotional. Chris forces a smile, nodding along, but his eyes are distant now, conflicted. The segment is supposed to be wrapping up, but no one in the room believes the real impact of this moment will end when the cameras cut. As the applause continues, Chris glances once more at Whoopi, something unreadable passing between them. The battle hasn't ended. It's simply waiting for what comes next. The applause fades as the producer's voice crackles faintly in everyone's earpieces, the unspoken countdown to commercial hovering over the set. The co-hosts straighten their papers, forcing smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. The conversation is technically over, but the air is still vibrating, charged with everything that was said, and everything that wasn't. Chris Rock nods politely as the segment wraps, thanking the hosts, waving to the audience. Whoopi Goldberg returns the gesture with a measured smile, calm on the surface, but unmistakably firm, like a door that has closed and locked. When the cameras finally cut, the studio doesn't erupt into chatter the way it usually does. There's a beat of stunned quiet, then a low swell of voices, producers rushing in, stagehands moving just a little too fast. Chris stands up, adjusting his jacket, his face set in that familiar comedian's mask, professional, composed, but the tension still clings to him. He leans toward Whoopi briefly. Whatever he says isn't picked up by a microphone, but her response is a simple nod. No smiles, no hugs, just acknowledgement. Back in the audience, people pull out their phones immediately. Clips are already uploading, captions flying. Did you see that? Chris Rock versus Whoopi just went off. This was uncomfortable. Within minutes, the moment is no longer confined to the studio. It's everywhere. Chris walks down the hallway backstage, laughter echoing faintly from another set, another show carrying on as if nothing seismic just happened. He pauses for a second, exhales, rubs his temples. He's replaying it now. The joke, the interruption, the word dangerous, the applause that split the room. He's faced boos before. He's faced outrage. But this feels different. This wasn't a crowd. This was a reckoning, delivered calmly, publicly, by someone who understood his world better than most. Across the building, Whoopi sits back down at the table, shoulders finally relaxing as the adrenaline drains away. One of the co-hosts leans toward her, whispering, "Are you okay?" Whoopi nods. "I'm fine," she says. And she is, but she also knows exactly what comes next. The headlines, the hot takes, the think pieces dissecting every word, every pause. She's been here before too. By the time Chris's car pulls away from the studio, the internet has already chosen sides. Some hail him as a defender of free speech, a comedian standing his ground in a world that's lost its sense of humor. Others accuse him of doubling down, of refusing to listen when it mattered most. His name trends within the hour, clips looping endlessly, slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed frame by frame. Whoopi's name trends right alongside his. Support pours in from people who felt seen by her words, who recognize the quiet strength it takes to challenge someone without shouting them down. Critics fire back just as hard, accusing her of policing comedy, of turning a joke into a lecture. The debate spreads far beyond the two of them now, morphing into something larger, something cultural. Late-night hosts weigh in that same evening, some joking nervously about the tension, others treating it with rare seriousness. Podcasts dissect the exchange. Opinion columns appear overnight. Comedy at a crossroads. When jokes stop landing. Who gets to decide what's funny? Everyone has an answer. No one agrees. Chris posts nothing at first. The silence only fuels speculation. Fans and critics alike read into it, projecting apologies, defiance, regret, arrogance, whatever fits their narrative. When he finally breaks the silence the next day, it's with a short message, carefully worded, thoughtful but firm. He talks about the importance of comedy, about pushing boundaries, about conversation, even uncomfortable ones. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't attack. He lets the ambiguity stand. Whoopi addresses it on air days later, looking straight into the camera. She doesn't mention Chris by name. She talks about dialogue, about listening, about the difference between intention and impact. Her voice is steady, unflinching. The message is clear without being pointed. And still, the debate rages on. Fans rewatch the clip, noticing new details each time. The way Chris's smile tightens, the way Whoopi leans in, the split-second pauses where everything could have gone differently. Some wonder what might have happened if one of them had softened sooner. Others argue that the discomfort was the point, that moments like this are necessary, even painful, to move anything forward. In comedy clubs, comedians reference it on stage, cautiously at first, then more boldly. Some side with Chris, railing against what they see as creeping censorship. Others echo Whoopi's call for awareness, for responsibility that doesn't kill humor but sharpens it. The room reactions vary wildly, laughter and silence trading places, proving the argument is far from settled. What's undeniable is this. A single joke cracked open a conversation that refuses to close. A moment meant to entertain turned into a mirror, reflecting back the fault lines running through culture, art, and identity. No one walked away untouched. Weeks later, the clip still circulates. New viewers discover it every day, reacting as if it just happened, adding fresh comments to an already endless thread. Some write long paragraphs about free speech. Others share personal stories about being hurt by jokes that never felt harmless. The war that started on that set keeps echoing, not because anyone won, but because the questions remain unanswered. And maybe that's the real aftermath. Not a knockout, not a neat resolution, but a moment that forced people to sit with discomfort, to choose whether to laugh, to argue, to listen, or to scroll past and pretend it never happened. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Chris Rock standing up for comedy, or was Whoopi Goldberg standing up for something bigger? Did the joke go too far, or did the reaction do the damage? Drop your honest opinion in the comments, because this conversation doesn't end here. If this story pulled you in, if you felt the tension, the silence, the weight of every word, Make sure you subscribe to The Truth Narrator for more explosive cinematic stories like this one. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And stay tuned, because the next truth is always closer than it seems.